Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky Podcast. You haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are running through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we're up to episode 7 of season 6. It's called Rascals. It was directed by Adam Nimoy. Name sound familiar? Teleplay goes to Alison Hawke. Story goes to Ward Botsford, Diana Botsford, and Michael Piller. Aired back on November 15th, 1992. In this one, Captain Picard, Guinan, Ensign Ro, and Keiko O'Brien materialize on the transporter pad as pre-adolescent children due to an anomaly. And also the Ferengi take over the ship. Clay and Dan are here to talk about this one, so right after this, we are going to go deep on Rascals.
What do you want?
I need to see my father.
Go back inside.
I need to see him right now.
Do not argue with me. Go back inside.
I need to see him now. Now, 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 now. Stop it, you hurt me. I want my father. I want my father.
All right, just stop that.
You know, I probably could have done without Rascals, but I would like to see the episode that explains why Picard, Guinan, Ro, and Keiko are in a shuttlecraft together at the start of this episode, because it makes no sense, to the point where my wife was like, why are all these people in the shuttlecraft with each other?
They're collecting pottery for some reason.
They are brought together by a common love of archaeology.
I specifically would like to see the episode where they explain why those characters are turned into kids, because I don't think they really do in this episode.
Well, it's unimportant in this one. I guess they're all bound up by their love of archaeology, although Guinan is just giving Picard shits the whole way back, which is one of the most annoying things you can do when you give somebody a ride, is that they start telling you what they think about, like, your shit, like how you do it, telling you to change the radio and stuff. I don't appreciate that, but yeah, it's just I don't think they could have picked a weirder assemblage of people to turn into children in this episode.
I think it makes sense. I think they picked except for, what's her name, Keiko?
Keiko, yeah.
Well, no, I guess that works too, because I feel like Keiko is interesting because you get once. Okay, let me back up for a second. My problem with this episode is that I feel like they totally bail on the concept after about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Keiko turning into a kid is kind of interesting, because then you can deal with, well, how does this impact her marriage? Ro is basically Tasha 2.0, so turning her into a kid, you get the whole, she never had a childhood angle. Right. Picard is kind of the same sort of thing, but it's also, he's the captain, so what's the future for him if he's a child? And Guinan is just basically like, I'm happy to be a kid. She's the one who's basically telling everybody to, enjoy it and chill out, which is really easy for her to say, having been alive for like 700 years or something already. But they just really bail immediately on the concept.
I think that's... Yeah, go ahead, Dan, sorry.
When they stuff them in a closet, or when they send them all for medical tests?
Well, it's just like They had kind of an interesting thing going with the idea that these characters turn into kids, and then it immediately turns into and then the Ferengi show up and manage to damage the ship to a point that we've like never seen in the show.
Yeah.
Can we jump ahead to that part, because that's the part that made me sit up. I was kind of 3/4 paying attention at that point, and I was like, well, hold on, you can't. They've fought any number of amazing enemies to a standstill, and these 4 Ferengi take over the ship in 5 seconds with
they call them
moderate amount of weaponry.
Clunker ships too. They're like scrap birds of prey or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't speak highly to Riker's command decisions. But let's I guess we should start with the kids, and I'll say that, Clay, I thought that the Keiko scene was the only scene I really enjoyed.
That's the best.
Yeah, with her and O'Brien.
Yeah, I agree.
I also want to say this is O'Brien and Keiko and Molly's last appearance on TNG.
No.
Yeah, they're done after this. And in a weird episode.
You know what? I'm done after this too, Wes.
His curly hair won't be gracing our screens anymore. He's Yeah, they filmed the Emissary pilot 2 months before this episode aired. So this is it for him, which is too bad. But I do think that the Keiko scene is the only one that makes me like intellectually look at it and go like, that would be weird. Like what is appropriate in this situation? The Ro one, whatever. Ro is, never had a childhood. And I think that actress actually plays the character she's supposed to be playing the best. The problem I guess I have is I can't stop cringing through the first half of this episode. Like when Lil Picard is telling people to do things and he's not saying things the way Picard would say. He doesn't pronounce his last name the way that Patrick Stewart pronounces Picard. It's all very distracting. And I sit there cringing the entire time. It's too bad.
That kid they picked to play Picard is terrible.
You know who he is? Actually, he's been on the show.
Is it Patrick Stewart's other son? Because the last time I said that, it turned out to be Patrick Stewart's son.
No, he played Renee in Family.
Oh.
It's that kid. That kid.
He's the most Ponzi actor they could find, that's for sure. He's a fancy boy.
Why didn't they get a person who came from the same area of London or of England as Patrick Stewart? It makes his accent is totally different.
Well, completely different.
Not only that, but my girlfriend walked through the room and saw like 30 seconds of that kid, and she said, "You're telling me they couldn't get like a Shakespearean actor kid to play this part? They just got some schlub."
You had one job.
He had one job, whatever that guy's name is. Yeah, he's tough. So, Dan, this is your first appearance on this little podcast or whatever it is. So tell me, what was your emotional state of mind as you were watching Rascals for your first episode?
I had completely forgotten about this episode until I saw the Netflix preview image, and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go. This is going to be. I was a little confused but excited, and then when we got to the Keiko part, I was hopeful. I was like, "Oh, they're doing what I think they should do with most TNG episodes. It's like, well, none of this matters past the end of the 44 minutes of film we put on air. So let's get weird with it. And let's just do a thing that will have no weight and no backing to it and we'll never have to talk about again."
Yeah.
So let's just go with it. And then I was basically emotionally shattered after that because they just kind of dropped it.
They did. You
mean you didn't enjoy young Guinan being like, "Hey, let's just have lollipops and play tag"?
Hey, everybody. I don't know why she talked like, "Hey."
That was a dubbed voice.
Was it?
We need to talk about that. Yeah, I rewatched a large part of the episode because I could swear it wasn't that was clearly not the voice coming out of that child. It was really weird. It really bothered me.
It
did look weird.
Apparently played younger Whoopi in like Sister Act 2 or something, like which came out that same year I was reading. So she's really just tethered herself to Whoopi Goldberg.
She's cornered the market in young Whoopi Goldberg.
But she's by far the worst of the child act. And I feel bad for all the kid actors in this one because it's not really fair of an episode to give to kid actors. But I think she was terrible. Like she was just horrific. I thought Patrick Stewart's double was the second worst after that. Mm-hmm. And Keiko and Ro did a good job. Both Keiko and Ro, the child actors, reminded me of their original characters in a way that the other two didn't.
Ro's pretty easy because she's,
bitchy.
Stiff.
Sort of like, yeah. Keiko, I don't know enough to really make a comparison, but she was good. The kid was good.
Yeah. And Keiko played her scenes the best. And Guinan as a kid had no point here.
Right.
It seemed like they wanted to carry the Ro storyline to be meaning something because the show ends with a Ro scene.
Right.
And it just I don't care about it. It's not interesting enough to carry it through.
What I found interesting is that it took apparently like 5 or 6 different writers to put this together.
Yeah.
Like where was did it fall apart? Did like half of them come up with the first half and be like, "This is a really interesting idea, but we don't really know what else to do with it"? And then the other half were like, "Well, I just saw the Ferengi and they haven't seen them much lately."
Right. And let's have them be badass Ferengi, like the baddest ass Ferengi we've ever seen. I think that I was reading that Ron Moore was just saying he like still cringes when he thinks about this episode. He couldn't believe that Michael Piller, the showrunner, bought the idea from somebody because we're at a point in season 6 where I think if I was watching the show like back in 1992 as these were airing, I would say that the show is starting to fall apart with these season 6 episodes that we've been watching. It's been a really weak stretch to start the season, and this feels like this is just like a jumping the shark idea for an episode, right?
Right. This is like a sweeps week kind of idea. It's like it has no reason to be.
Right.
It's sold. This episode is sold by the ad, which is next week they get turned into kids.
Yeah. It's fucking wacky as shit. It makes it's I don't know. It's just it seems like if they there's no way you can get this pitch and just be like, yeah, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. How about we turn them into kids? Keiko? Definitely get Keiko in there. We need more Keiko scenes. It just feels stupid and it feels silly and it's just a bad idea that they eventually turn into Die Hard on the Enterprise kind of with children. Yeah.
But that was the part that I thought was actually fun, though you didn't really need to be kids to make that part happen. I mean, essentially it's like just first contact with children a little bit. But
now you're selling me on an idea.
Now I'm getting very high concept here, so just stick with me. That was the part that was actually fun. The rest of it was like, okay, yeah, maybe.
Did you? Well, before I get into what I hate about it, it's like they try to do this arc with Picard, right? Do either of you buy the fact that Troy, after Picard turns into a child, Troy can talk to him for 5 minutes, and Picard is legitimately thinking about leaving the Enterprise and going back to the Academy and stuff?
No.
His Wesley Crusher dig,
right?
Yeah.
I thought that scene was so terrible because it completely is not the Picard that we know.
Yeah.
He's not resolute. He's not thoughtful at all. But that would be good if they were trying to push the idea that they were children again and they had childlike personalities. Then it would be interesting. It's like, oh, it's playing out of character. This is a completely different kind of Picard. But instead it's just kind of this weird, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll play totally out of character thing.
I'll go back, yeah.
They go out of their way to say that they haven't changed mentally at all. It's just that they've de-aged physically. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't really change anything as far as the character acts. And I think that's like it's the kind of thing where I think it could have been really interesting if they had, pushed it further, but they don't. They don't really do anything with it at all. It's just
no, it feels like the universe of TNG is at a point where everyone in this universe is mature enough for what goes on to continue to happen. Like they're pros on the ship. I don't understand why Ro couldn't just still be the pilots. There's nothing changing there. It's a little ridiculous because the actor who plays Picard starts yelling orders and he sounds absurd when he's doing it. But there's no reason why he would have to relieve himself of duty. It's not like he's on a mission where he needs to be an ambassador to some war or something.
Right.
There's no reason for him to drop out other than.
Well, I don't know. You could make the case that regardless of what they say about your current mental state, being turned back into a 12-year-old boy might have an effect on your current state of mind.
Right. But the next neutral zone encounter is going to be very awkward if he's still the 12-year-old boy.
But the thing is, if you kind of have to make a decision either way. Either they haven't changed mentally or they have changed mentally. It's tough to be like, no, they're perfectly fine. It's just like normal Picard, but he's not fit for duty because he's been changed into they kind of have to come down on one side of that.
Yes. Yeah. And they decide that they don't really want to do that. I mean, it's I don't know. Like we've talked about sort of the scenes that we like here. They bring the Ferengi back in a way that I almost take the Ferengi seriously in this episode, even though it's absurd how they managed to do what they do.
There's a point when they're being fired upon by those Klingon ships that Worf says on whatever thing, there has been massive amounts of casualties. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, they do. They really kill a lot of people in this episode.
The kids should just be climbing over dead bodies in the Jeffrey tube and stuff when they're crawling around.
These 4 shitbox Klingon ships flown by Ferengi managed to do damage to the Enterprise that like only the Borg have done.
Yeah. Well, they got the jump on them. They decloaked. I don't think it's even 4. I think it's just 2 ships.
I honestly, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but could you explain to me what the hell the plot of this episode is? Once the Ferengi show up, what is the plot from the Ferengi angle? Like, why are they there? Why are they trying to take over the ship? I cannot remember.
I think they just want to sell it for a profit.
No,
like I don't think they have anything outside. He says something along the lines of like, for the small investment of these Klingon ships and some weapons, we now have a Federation starship.
Wasn't there also a mining aspect to it, or they were like,
that's right.
There's a slave labor aspect to
It's
it.
real, like a slave labor where he killed all the previous crew members by doing the slave labor. You know that
Right.
other ship they were responding
That's
to.
right.
Oh, well, what about the scene? What about the scene where they beam Geordi and a bunch of random people down to the planet to become slaves, and you never see them again?
No resolution at all.
Yeah, I don't know why I completely blocked out the slave labor angle, but yeah, apparently they worked another starship's crew to death, and now they're starting to send the adults down. I guess that's part of it. I don't know why this is a pretty brutal Ferengi plotline in general.
Yeah,
I guess.
I feel like generally they put a lot of things in motion in this episode that have a lot larger ramifications than I think they realized.
Yeah.
Another one being the amount of power the transporter seems to have, that it can remove pieces of your genetic code. If whatever that thing was that removed a certain piece of their genetic code, it puts you back together and de-ages you by 25 years. Or that's insane.
Well, I think they've just discovered the secret to immortality in the series.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
they figured out how to keep you alive by doing this, which of course is never going to be brought up again, but it goes to fit into how absurd the power of the transporter is.
And like the way they get out of it at the end is they're just like, and okay, we put that piece back in.
You're good now.
That's all it takes.
I feel there's like 4 scenes of Beverly Crusher explaining the process that happened, and I'm like, I don't care. Like you don't need to go to these lengths to explain. She has that scene where Riker's like, whoa, Doc. Like, take it easy. Like, let's go a little bit loose here with the definitions. But it felt absurd. It felt like it just kept going on and on for forever.
Is that before or after the lesson in DNA and how DNA works, which was more absurd than any techno-babble conversation they've had in the entire series?
I think that was that conversation. He's like, it's been a long time since I studied genetics. Mm-hmm. Whatever he's talking about. Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, the slave labor at the bottom. But I mean, they handled the Ferengi fairly well. I mean, I suppose this is what they wanted the Ferengi to be from the start, right? When they were introduced in season 1, this is kind of it. They're still annoying as hell, but
were they not meant to just be like, space
Jews?
Space Jews, yeah.
I wasn't going to say it, Dan, but you can say it.
I was. They're like, what are those? They're like the little Jewish monsters in Harry Potter. They're just supposed to be some horrible stereotype. Offers a small amount of comic relief.
Yeah, the only thing that I really know about the Ferengi are anytime that they're in a scene, they're like arguing over the price of a rug or something. So yes, that's the only thing I've ever equated them to.
No, they were supposed to be introduced as the new villain for the series. And it went so poorly that they abandoned that idea. Because they've always been this sort of obnoxious little goblin race that no one can particularly take seriously. And I think they're fairly, like, why the Ferengi in this episode? If you were writing this, why would you pick the Ferengi?
No reason.
If I had to pick a reason, I would say they are easily, could believe them
getting tricked by children?
Yeah, screwing up, like falling into their own success and then equally falling out of it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's true. And to be fair, Clay, someone does say exactly that line in the episode, and they basically telegraph the downfall of the enemy, where they're like, oh, well, they're probably distracted by their hubris at this point.
Yes, yeah, they're so
That's right. They do say that.
it's the TNG racist angle where it's okay to be racist against certain races. They're like, the Ferengi typically when they have success tend to become a little bit full of themselves.
Yeah.
And, that's just typical Italian and Ferengi things.
If there's one thing I can't stand, it's the oh fuck it, never mind.
That's the Ferengi quotes. It's on their
Yeah.
coin. I guess that makes sense. Like if you had the Cardassians would make more sense as like a slave trading race, but I guess the Cardassians would just kill the kids. Like there would be no.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, who else could you pick I mean, I guess you could go with some unknown entity, but if you do that, there's a lot of unknown variables as to how they could act. But if you go with a Ferengi, I can't really think of another race that they've encountered that could kind of be middle of the road enough for this story to work.
Yeah, right.
Like the Romulans would fucking kill everybody. The Cardassians would kill everybody. I mean, if it was a rogue bunch of Klingons, you'd be starting a civil war.
Right. Yeah.
Or an intergalactic war. So yeah, they kind of seem like the only ones that work.
Yeah. I guess that's
so.
True.
I want to ask you a question. So back to the number of writers. I don't know if you read anything about this episode. I haven't, but I'm curious. Do you know if this was like two separate episode ideas that were squished together?
Well, you tell me your thoughts. I'm going to look this up as I do this. So,
okay. The reason I bring that up is because I thought that they telegraphed something in the first scene that was going to somehow play into the entire story, and it never came back up. And it's when Picard is talking about the pottery that he has.
You there
he
still?
Says, this is crazy. This pottery... Yeah, still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, the Skype just went a little crazy. That's all right. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So, yeah, it's the scene where Picard... They're flying back on the shuttlecraft, and Picard is looking at the pottery pieces that he found, and he says, it's amazing. This pottery is over 700 years old, but it looks like it was just crafted yesterday. I thought that was going to somehow lead into the idea that an explanation of why they got turned young again.
Oh.
I mean, I guess maybe it was supposed to be just a metaphor, but I don't know. It just seemed like such a specific thing to say and then have them be turned young. I thought there was going to be some sort of connection that was going to explain that stuff, but it never comes up again.
No, it's No, I don't think so. And I'm just to answer your question. So the story was pitched by two people who are a father and daughter. Michael Piller bought it, built onto the idea, and then had a fourth writer who wrote the teleplay.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That doesn't really answer anything, but it ties into maybe why it's so disjointed as this early issue that they kind of bring up comes out of nowhere. I assume it's just the show trying to link something and it doesn't become important by the end of it.
It has to be two ideas because you could do a full episode on either half of the plot and it would make you wouldn't be lacking in that first half or that second half being gone. It's two entirely separate ideas that sort of just they didn't have 22 or 44 minutes each to do. So they're like, let's just toss them together in some random way.
I think, but I've watched 130 episodes of this to this point, and I feel like TNG would be unable to do the first half story where they're turning into kids and make a full episode out of it. Just because, I think shows could do that, but TNG would have to stick some kind of B plot onto it. And what they do here is the Ferengi thing. But I feel like they could have built the B story and had it stand on its own. That could have been an entire, because they do that in Starship Mine, which is coming up, which is a great title of an episode anyway. But yeah, I can't believe, it's just the kid plots. It's just so bizarre. And it also, the only scene that really impacts them by being children is the scene where Picard has to stamp his feet and throw a hissy fit to get to talk to Riker.
Daddy.
And Riker calls himself Daddy in the scene, which made me fucking vomit all over the place.
I like that scene. I thought that scene was pretty good.
Well, that's the one scene that actually takes advantage of the idea that they've set up.
Yeah. I think I agree with you, Dan. I wish that this had been an episode, like even overall in the 6th season, right? I feel like you've gotten to the point where this is where you start getting weird. You know, this is where you start having those high concept ideas and just pushing them as far as you can go. You're in 6 seasons. What the hell? What's the downfall? They canceled the show, so you did 6 seasons. It's great. You get all the time in the world to really push some ideas. They're bringing up some interesting things, like the transporter episodes they've been doing have been kind of interesting. But like this is an episode with a core idea that could have gotten really interesting, really weird, and they could have done some really cool stuff, but they just totally balk on it. It just turns into like like I said, a trailer beat more than the full episode idea.
Yeah.
This episode and the next episode seem like, stuff that they say at the end of remember when the Simpsons have their big clip show and they talk about what's coming in the next 5 years. And it's like that, where it's like Picard turns into a kid.
Yeah.
Worf turns into an old Western hero, and wedding after wedding after wedding.
It's the ending of Arrested Development, where the stuff that won't actually happen is sort of hinted at, that this is what's going to be. Yeah, I mean, the season 6, from all the episodes I've seen, they're definitely picking up weirder angles here, because the showrunners have moved on to Deep Space Nine at this point, so the writers' room has kind of been left to its own devices, and ideas that they never would have done before are starting to come up, like Rascals, this one, like turning kids, the Western idea, the transporter. There was the Scotty episode where before it was not allowed to have TOS members on the show, so they're loosening the reins there. It feels to me like they got too much power too soon, and just because they had the ability to do these ideas, they did them.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about it. I always skip Rascals. I haven't seen this episode in forever because I think it's terrible. But it's like you're saying, I thought it had potential. Just didn't go anywhere with it.
Yeah, it's got I don't know. It's got a couple scenes that I think work because of the goodwill that you've built with the characters up to this point. But I think it's a missed opportunity to do something weird and cool.
Best scene. Start with Clay.
I would say probably that O'Brien and Keiko scene, with a close second being the Picard and Riker scene, just because I thought that was a really great use of the Riker surprised face.
Yes, yeah. Jean-Luc, how are you? How are your friends, Keiko and Ro? Dan, what do you think was the best scene?
I mean, without a doubt, it's the Keiko and O'Brien scene. I mean, that's the one that actually gives a shit for the entire course of the episode. And it's also the one that gets just a little strange and actually tries to deal with some ramifications of what this would do instead of turning into Kid Die Hard for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. It's got a lot of little beats in it, like where she starts ordering the coffee out of the thing and he interrupts because he thinks she's not the same person. And it's just, I know what you like, jackass. But yeah, it's I enjoyed that as well, and it's I guess it's easy to see why O'Brien would be selected to move over to Deep Space Nine at that point.
This has nothing to do with this episode, but it is a question. I can't remember. Somebody said this to me. It might have been Sean. And stop me if we've talked about this before. But what do they do with all the trash created by the replicator?
I think they throw it back into the replicator, and it gets rid of it.
Is that how it works? Is it like all recycle itself?
The
answer is it's a TV show, and it doesn't matter.
I would assume, but I don't know. I think there have been episodes that have referenced like trash before, although I don't know. Yeah,
someone out there must know.
That's a very good question.
Because I mean, what's the difference between the replicator and a transporter? You know what I mean?
The replicator is. I don't know the way it works, obviously, but
but I mean,
I lost my manual.
If you just had this supply of like matter and you could turn it into energy and then replicate it into food, turn it into food, I don't see any difference between the technologies at that point.
That's true. And what was the episode with the last two people on the planet, and one of them is a god, and they leave them a replicator, and they basically explain how the replicator works, that it takes any matter and energy and turns it into
Oh, that's who
whatever you
watches
want
The
it.
Watchers or something.
Right.
Is it, yeah, that episode. Yeah. So they explain how simple it is, and they give it to some tribes people who don't have a wrench, and they say, "Here you go, you can use this." Anyway, I think we're done talking about Rascals. We should move on to final thoughts. I'm going to play a short audio clip that'll be filled with charming young actor voices. We'll come back and we'll give our final thoughts and ratings for Rascals.
What's wrong?
I don't know, but this feels wrong somehow.
Miles Edward O'Brien, I am still your wife.
Well, technically, yes.
Technically?
No, I mean, of course you're my wife. But you're also 10 years old.
Beverly said it's actually closer to 12.
Now, that's not the point.
So what is the point? Is our marriage over?
I didn't say that. But, well, until they find a way to reverse this effect, it's hard for me to ignore the fact that you're a little girl.
What if they can't find a way? What if I'm like this for the rest of my life?
Rascals. Well, it's a hell of an episode anyway. Guys, if you want to give your final thoughts, or not final thoughts, but if you want to vote on this and you're watching on YouTube, you can click in the upper right-hand corner of the video. There'll be an option to bring up a poll. You can let us know on our scale of 1 to 5, what are you going to give this bad boy? And I'm interested. I tweeted before we came out here. Excuse me, I'll lead into this before asking you guys what you thought as a rating. I thought that this episode was a terrible episode that someone could think about enough and come up with an explanation and sort of tell me that it's actually a very good episode. Am I way off in that?
No, you're not at all. Because I was really on board for a large part of it, and it was like a roller coaster effect where I was very quickly off board and on again. And I actually walked away from watching it last night feeling pretty positive about it. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is an absolute piece of garbage.
I think it's got like a wisp of real deep thought going to it, and that it just quickly gets washed away. But I feel like if someone did like that's like a Star Wars kind of breakdown where they just broke down frame by frame and were like, actually, this is real deep. I think this episode would be a prime contender for that.
Are you talking about Rascals Ring Theory?
Yeah, it's
I have a very long website that you should read if that's what you're talking about.
You just watch Rascals 700 times in a row, and eventually it all starts to make sense. So, guys, what'd you think? Dan, why don't you give us a rating on our scale of 1 to 5 where you'd place this bad boy?
I'm going to give it a sympathetic 2.5 because it was a missed opportunity, but a really good missed opportunity.
Clay?
I'm also going to give it a 2 because I know this is not technically the way that I'm supposed to be thinking about this stuff, but I can't give it a 1 because I remember what 1s are, and this is definitely not a 1. This is a definitely watchable episode that doesn't puke all over its own shoes. But again, like Dan said, I think it's a missed opportunity. There's an interesting idea there that they could have exploited, but they don't. And it just turns into, run-of-the-mill whatever. And nothing really stands out to me as being like really, really awful to the point where, would I ever watch it again? No, never in a million years.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just
there.
Yeah, it's just
See,
I don't really know what else to say.
I'll give it a 1 because on my scale, 1s are 1s.
You're so harsh.
Whoa!
I give it a 1 because 1s on my scale are episodes that I would never feel the need to watch again, and this is pretty much that.
That's fair.
I find the first half to be really cringy too. Like I watch it and I'm just like, oh god damn, that like they had to film that. I feel so bad for the kids. Like this is just not looking good on anyone. And yeah, I don't know. I don't like this episode. Really.
I feel like this one and the next one, their setups are really forced. Like you were saying, like what the hell? Why are those specific 4 people in a shuttlecraft?
Yeah,
it's just a weird place to start, and it happens in the next one too, where it's just like they're kind of not really doing anything, which allows the story to happen.
Yes, although I think I'll have more to say about that with the next one.
Yeah.
The setup for this one feels like a joke, like a botanist, a captain, and an ensign are with a bartender on a shuttlecraft. It's like, all right, well, this will be really interesting. But anyway, yeah, we're going to give it a 1. Guys, if you enjoyed the content, you're on YouTube, like in the comments, appreciate it. If you're on iTunes, a rating review helps get the show out there. You can go to facebook.com/The Podcast, leave a like and a comment. You go to patreon.com/The Podcast if you're interested in not behind the scenes, but additional audio garbage for your ears. Dan, Clay, thank you very much for coming on.
Anytime.
Yeah.
We're going to be back with a fistful of datas after this, and I think we'll have opinions about that one, hopefully anyway, because I think it's a slightly better episode than Rascals. But anyway, guys, see ya.